Today you're going to be adding and subtracting fractions with unlike denominators. The first problem that we're going to work on is adding fractions. And so we have 8/10 and we want to add 2/4. Immediately you should recognize that the denominators are not the same, so we have to find equivalent fractions. To do that, you have two methods that you can use. You can quickly multiply them together and you would get 40, or you can try to find the LCD. The LCD is what we are looking for, and that's our lowest common denominator. So we're going to use strategy number 2 that we talked about in class, and that's finding the multiples. So I take 10 and I take 4 and I list the multiples of them, and I'm going to stop. So 10, 20, 30. Now I can go and do my multiples of 4. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. I immediately want to stop here because I recognize that I already have a 20 in my tens. So I can circle this as my LCD. I'm going to now take that back to my problem, and I know that I can find an equivalent fraction that has a denominator of 20. Now to get the equivalent fraction, all I'm going to do is use what number it would take me to get to 20. So 4 times what number is 20? And that is 5. And whatever I do to my denominator, I must do to my numerator. 2 times 5 is 10. Same thing here. 10 times what number is 20? And yes, that is 2. 8 times 2 is 16. Now that my denominators are the same, I can simply add my fractions together. 16 plus 10 is 26, and my denominator stays the same. I do not want to leave my fraction like this because it's an improper fraction, meaning it's not simplified. So how many times does 20 go into 26? That is going to be 1 time. How much is left over? 6 is left over, and my denominator is 20. I do not want to leave this fraction like this while I can, because I know that it is not simplified because you have two even numbers. So what is my greatest common factor? That number is going to be 2. So I'm going to divide both of these by 2. To get a simplified fraction, and 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 20 divided by 2 is 10. I know that this is simplified because 3 is a prime number. So now I'm going to bring my parts of my problem back together. So I had a whole number, and now I have a simplified fraction. So my final answer is 1 3/10. And I like to put a nice little cloud bubble around it to show my final answer. So now let's switch over to another subtraction problem. Another addition problem. So I'm going to come down here. Let's say I have 5 3/4. And I want to add 2 5/6. Again, I should notice that my denominators are not the same. However, Again, I have even numbers and I know that they must share something. I can do the quick strategy of multiplying by 4 and 6 to get 24, or remember, we're looking for our LCD. So I'm going to use the multiples, 4 and 6. I can always look up here to help me with my multiples if I forgot them. So 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, and I'm just going to go one more, 28, because that's the seventh multiple. Now I go by 6. 6, 12, 18, 24, and just for fun, I'm going to go one more to 30. I see right now that I have an LCD of 24. Or do I have an LCD of 12? Correct. Yes, they both have 24 in common, but if I'm looking for my lowest common denominator, that number is going to be 12. So I take that number 12 back over here and I make me an equivalent fraction that has 12 as my common denominator. 6 times 2 gives me 12. 5 times 2 is 10. 4 times 3 is 12. And that is 9. Now I'm ready to add my fractions. 9 plus 10 is 19, and my denominator stays the same. Add my whole numbers, 5 plus 2, and that's 7. This looks a little interesting now. I have an improper fraction again, now with a whole number. I need to simplify this 19 twelfths. 12 goes into 19 one time, and I will have 7 left over if my denominator stays the same. So now I have to bring my problem back together. And so I'm going to take my whole numbers, put them back together, add them, and then that's 8, and bring down my simplified fraction, which is 7 twelfths, and voila, my final answer is 8 and 7 twelfths. Now let's move to subtraction. Let's say I have 4 fifths and I want to subtract 5 twelfths. Again, you should notice that your denominators are different, but this time they don't have anything in common. 5 is not a factor of 12, or 12 is not a factor of 5, so I can use that quick method of simply multiplying the denominators together. When you multiply 12 times 5, you get, correct, 60. They become the magic number for the opposite. So 12 times 5 is 60. 5 times 5 is 25. Now my magic number here is 12, which was the denominator of the other one. 5 times 12 is 60, and 4 times 12 is 48. Now I want to subtract 48 minus 25 is 23 over 60. And I have to ask myself, is this fraction simplified? Yes, it is. And you should know that it's simplified because 23 is a prime number, and 23 and 60 do not share a greatest common factor. So therefore, I can put my bubbles around my final answer. Last problem that we have. 5 and 1/3 minus 2 and 1/2. They don't have anything in common. They are not factors of each other, so I can just simply multiply them together to get 6, because 3 times 2 is 6. The magic number here was 3. The magic number here was 2. 3 times 2 is 6. 1 times 3 is 3. 3 times 2 is 6, and 1 times 2 is 2. I notice now that I have a bit of a problem. I can't take 3 from 2, so that means I have to go to the 5, the whole number, and borrow a whole. I am going to cross that out. I'm going to borrow 1 whole. There are 6 in a whole. So I'm going to take those back and add them together. So now I have 8 6. Now I have enough to take 3 from 8. So 8 minus 3 is 5. My denominator is 6. 4 minus 2 is 2. This is a simplified fraction, and I can't go any further, so this is my final answer. So you are adding and subtracting fractions with unlike denominators.